Thank you all of you for being here. And sustainable innovation, like we know, is a business practice that aims to increase efficiency, reduce waste, and provide value to customers. But how does one balance cost effectiveness with what consumers want and what is really good for the earth? Starting with you, Mr. Bigchandani, you've worked so much with corporates, especially startups. Tell us, how is young India looking at something like sustainability? Is it just a responsibility for them, or are they looking at it as a strategy that needs to be aligned with how their own companies are looking at business?
So I think let's start with young people before we start with young companies. I think if you look at young people, people who are in their 20s today or even younger, I think they are really committed to sustainability. And I know this from the young workforce that's joining the workplace today. They want to, if a company is seen as more responsible, it will tend to be a more attractive place for young people to work, and we are seeing that. We run Naukri. We ourselves employ 5,500 people. People want to work in a company where they feel that practices and thinking is more aligned to their personal values. And the younger generation is definitely bothered about being green and sustainable. That's young people. Now we come to the startups. I think you've got to distinguish between those that are in the sustainability business and those that are not in the sustainability business but want to do what they're doing in a more sustainable manner, right? So Zomato is not, where we invested with larger shareholders, is not in the sustainability business. It's in the food delivery business. It's in the quick commerce business. There's a very clear commitment that we have to do it in a more sustainable manner. Whether it is, right now 30 to 40% of Zomato delivery vehicles are EVs, right. They're e-bikes, right? That's a significant number. It's up from zero about 4 or 5 years ago. You look at the packaging that Zomato sends is always trying to figure out ways to, don't ask for cutlery if you don't want it, encouraging restaurant partners to use packaging that is more sustainable, right, when shipping the orders. So it's about doing, for very many startups, it's about doing business, the regular business, in a more sustainable manner. And, most are keen and game to do it. Then there are startups which are in the sustainability business. So we've invested in a carbon credit exchange. We've got a couple of battery tech companies. We've got a couple of companies that are financing EVs, e-rickshaws. They are in the business and they're actually benefiting from the economic opportunity, the commercial opportunities that the sector provides. And obviously they will do it in a more sustainable manner because it's their business. So it's happening. Can more happen? Answer is yes. But a lot more is happening than was happening about 3 or 4 years ago.
Right. Mr. Desai, but can businesses be sustainable and cost effective at the same time? Because when we talk about innovation, we're also talking about the challenge of funding. But we've also seen the example of ethanol, something like using stubble to create something as useful as ethanol. So do you see this happening very often in your sector?
There is always, the challenge for any developing countries to how much to reduce carbon emission. So by whether it will curtail your growth and the industry, development. So this is always a question. So, but of course, in our experience with ethanol, we have seen that, when you try to implement ethanol production facilities all over India to help the government to meet their E20 or ethanol 20 mandate, that is a blending of 20% ethanol in petrol. So basically, initially, we need a lot of capex and a lot of burden on the investors to really, install these plants, procure very high cost feedstock to convert those into ethanol. But eventually we have seen that, on the long run, it will create a lot of green jobs. It will also develop their own industry, which is always in the rural, economy. So basically, through ethanol or through any other renewable energy source, initial capex will be higher. But on the long run, once you recover the capex, so it will start paying you. Okay. So I don't see that, if you have a choice of building another petroleum refinery or an ethanol refinery, so I would always suggest you go with the ethanol refinery to meet out the additional demand. So I don't see that there is any challenge now Initially, there was a challenge, but
Right.
now I don't think there is any challenge.
Right. Mr. Todi, how is corporate India actually looking at sustainability? Because I was reading some pieces where people are even resistant to having, say, a paperless office completely. So clearly there could be some resistance within the workforce, and also, client engagement becomes very important. How is corporate India even looking at sustainability as an important feature?
For corporate India, is sustainability a responsibility? Is it a competitive advantage, or is it beneficial to the business? I would say that it's all three. So it's responsibility of the corporates to do the right thing, given that they are responsible for a lot of, let's say, emissions and environmental impacts. But at the same time, investing in sustainability is both profitable financially, and there are significant non-financial benefits as well. As Sanjeev pointed out, that younger people, the right talent wants to work for the right companies. But at the same time, there's significant benefits both on the revenue uplift, but as well as cost optimization. And on the third side, it's also a competitive advantage. If you invest in the right technologies, and I'll give specific examples. For instance, we have been one of the early companies to invest in what we call net zero buildings. There's a real estate company in the Mahindra portfolio which is building net zero buildings, and there's a huge demand for this. In our Mahindra logistics business, we have been offering a suite of green logistics services. So as Sanjeev pointed out, Zomato is looking to deliver using green fleet. We provide that green fleet. And not just B2C companies, but across all B2B operations as well, people are looking for greener solutions. Now, it's a vast topic. So the way we look at Mahindra is that, given that we operate in so many different industries, we have put a strategy which says that how can you convert each of the company to becoming a planet positive company. First, look at your own operations, things that you have complete control on in terms of emissions, water, waste, material circularity, operational elements. The second is, how do you transition the nature of the business itself to becoming a green business? So EVs, green buildings, green holidays, green financing, all of these sectors have immense business opportunity. And the last element is, what actions can you take to get social justice and environmental justice going on together? So things like sustainable agriculture, tree plantation involving the community are some of the other big focus areas. So very well integrated, I would say.
Dr. Murkab, when we think about this traditionally polluting industry, when it comes to industry that is resource intensive, be it chemicals or textile, how are you building sustainability into your processes, and how are you able to convince people that you are doing this?
It is a difficult proposition for sure. There's no doubt about it. But जो आज हम बस देख रहे हैं about sustainability, somewhere or the other, I've always believed that this was always there. With all the stalwarts here. Sir, sustainability, to my thought, is about innovation, one. Two, cutting down on power, steam. Three, consistency. Four, cost. Fifth, involvement of your labor so that they know what they are doing, what they are talking about. Sixth, the most important, what you rightly said, the young generation today. This young generation of today is a powerhouse. And the way they are taking up things in the right manner, the country is looking forward for a great future for sure. वो दिन दूर नहीं है जब मेरे वतन को सोने की चिड़िया बुलाया जाता था, वो फिर सोने की चिड़िया कहलाएगा. That's what I can talk about it.
Mr. Bigchantani, what would your advice be to companies when it comes to balancing financial objectives with, when I was talking to some people preparing for this panel, and they said ethical supply chain is a big thing, and if you have to make a product up to customer satisfaction, there could be some compromise on sustainability. How would you advise companies to sort of balance that out?
So I think there are various situations. There are situations where it makes clear financial sense to go for the greener option. There may be some capex, but on OPEX, ultimately, you win out, and over a 5, 7, 10-year period, you're way ahead. So there, I think it's by and large a no-brainer. You are going green, you're going sustainable, and it's making financial sense, right? Then you come to a situation where there's regulation, where the government is mandated. That may make more financial sense, but you better do this, right? There also, the more compliant companies will do it, okay? Now you come to a situation where there's no regulatory mandate and it doesn't make financial sense. those are the areas where if the market doesn't reward you, the customer doesn't reward you, the customer doesn't prefer you because you're greener, there will be a challenge. Because if you go for the greener option, but you end up with a higher cost structure or perhaps higher prices, and your competition does not, you will have a challenge. And there, I think there may be some compromises, but we have to wait and watch and see what happens. But I think, Ankit, you may have an informed view on this.
Ankit, would you like to, and especially you are also in the field of renewable energy, and do you think there is scope for innovation there? And like he says, do you think there needs to be more collaborations there?
No. So let me just add one point to what Sanjeev said. So definitely three parts, things that make financial and environmental sense. Renewable energy is an example. Those will scale, throughout the country. Every private sector, public sector will adopt it. Things where you could say it's financially neutral or financially negative, but driven by regulation. Again, lots of examples. The government is very serious. In the last 3 years, there have been extended life responsibility regulations for plastics, for batteries, for tires, for end-of-life vehicles. Increasingly, more and more sectors are being covered by regulation. And the moment there's regulation, automatically there's a financial sense that comes into it. Someone has to recycle, someone has to comply. That's that category. The third category, areas which are required from an environmental perspective, but the environment is not supportive enough. I think it's a matter of time, because increasingly the amount of change that you'll see, India is considered one of the most vulnerable countries. As a result, the kind of implications that you'll see from climate change will mean that one by one, each sector will start making financial sense, either driven by innovation, technology, or driven by regulation. To answer the second part of the question, I think renewables, we are sort of so renewables have been in India for a really long time, but we are at that stage where we are really accelerating on renewables. The government, with the policies as part of the net zero goal for 2070, has a 500 gigawatt target. What that would mean is about 40-45% of the country's total power will come from renewable energy. There's opportunity to make that even higher, 70-75%. So I think when it comes to renewables, it's all about how quickly can you deploy more and more renewable energy, because it makes financial sense, like strong financial sense, both at the grid level for the country, for a private sector company. So at Mahindra, we recently announced a 1,200 crore project for solar wind hybrid. Similarly, even at a smaller scale for MSMEs, it makes a lot of sense. That's the renewable side of the story. But on energy transition, the energy efficiency is also an extremely important part. That while you shift your energy requirement to green energy, how can you also make sure that you produce things more efficiently? That's another part of the equation that's really important, and that the industry is focusing on.
So, do you want to add a point?
Yeah, there's one other aspect. It's the role of investors. Okay, we are a listed company. Now, until 5 years ago, I had never ever heard the term ESG or even bothered about it. For the first time, I think it was investors, and these were international investors. We are listed, right? We've got institutional investors from overseas. We've got a report saying your ESG score is not as good as it could be. I say, yeah, what is ESG? So the guy showed me, and he showed me a report, and somebody had rated us. Okay, and that's why I came back, and it became an agenda in the company. We've got to be good at this.
Right.
It is now entering the paradigm, the way investors, the better investors, evaluate companies and therefore reward it by buying or not buying its shares.
Right.
And therefore, so once that happens, at least the more formal corporate sector, the listed companies, will tend to get nudged from many directions, whether it's employees, younger employees, whether it's investors, whether it's customers, whether it's government, to actually, go for greener solutions.
Mr. Desai, would you like to also answer something on this role of corporate India in innovation? Because Ankit also spoke about this, and innovation seems to be very important in the field of sustainability. How has the role of corporate India in supporting innovations in the field of sustainability evolved in the last few years?
Yeah, first of all, innovation is the need of the hour for promoting any renewable energy. Of course, it requires a lot of investment in terms of research, development, pilot plant, pilot studies, and study in terms of feedstock. because except solar and wind, all other renewable energy source like ethanol, biodiesel, SAF, the sustainable aviation fuel, then compressed biogas, all these require a lot of feedstock. So research on feedstock and how to precondition the feedstock, make it suitable for producing efficiently the energy. So all these areas we need a lot of investment in terms of R&D pellet plants. So definitely in India at least I have seen that many companies, organizations, they are investing heavily in the research and they are acquiring talent for doing the research work. So then they are coming out with innovative solutions for the industry. So this is definitely going to help. And also from the government side, they are also coming out and giving a lot of capex, incentives for R&Ds, even the pellet plants. So there are so many announcements made in the past for all these renewable energy
Right.
R&D work. Yeah.
Dr. Amirka, what is the role of the government, or for that matter even NGOs, because we're talking about sustainability from a very holistic point of view, so even local communities have to be sort of involved. Does the government here play a very important role, because the government here has a stated objective of net zero emissions? What kind of role do you see even local communities playing in this?
Well, to be honest with you, government definitely does play a major role. For example, let's go back to the ancient days. India was, since I hail from a textile background, what I can really cite an example is about fabric, for example. There were times when India was the largest producer of fabric. People used to come and trade with India, buy fabric from here and give whatever we wanted. Those days are gone. Textile is diminishing. The fact is, we are talking all about emission, this and that. Even textile for say, when we talk about natural dyes today whatever are being used in fabric, आप और मैं जो भी colored कपड़े पहन रहे हैं, these are all with dyes, and they are not at all good as far as eco-friendly awareness is concerned. Eco dyes, what can be manufactured is either from the trees or from the flowers. But again, it's a threat, because if we really take it up in a bigger scale, हम environment को नुकसान पहुंचा रहे हैं. One side we are talking about plantation of trees, the other side we are talking about cutting them. Let's be also very honest, the construction of roads these days, overbridges coming up, it's a necessity. But amount of loss as far as the green environment is concerned is again a bigger threat.
Right.
What are we really doing for that? Talking about the universities we talked about some time back, like for example the textile in particular, there's a university in Bombay called UDC, now ICT. There's only one of its kind. If we have certain more institutes like this for taking these thoughts forward, it can be a great significance.
My last question to you, Ankit. I was looking up into the internet and I see a lot of certifications. How does a company sort of, become sustainable? What is the framework, and what is the importance of transparency in showing that you're very sustainable?
So when I joined the Mahindra Group, the first question that I was supposed to work on is that what makes a corporate a sustainability leader? And unlike financial metrics, there's no easy answer. No certification can tell you that you're a sustainability leader. And that's where this entire idea came, that there is one definition of sustainability, which is about ESG, looking at environment, social governance dimensions. Hundreds of questions go into that. You have to look at nitty-gritties of everything that a company does. That's one way to look at it. The second way to look at it is, how do you transform the nature of your business?
Right.
So that's the most action on ground. Both in your operational areas, but as Sir was pointing out, that how do you change the nature of the company and the way you get revenue? So auto sector going to EVs, logistics sector doing green logistics, renewables as an example. So all of that revenue, business revenue, is the second area. The third area is at the intersection, that are you really adding value to the planet and society? So there are multiple ways to look at it, but there's no clear one answer that there's a certification that can certify a company is green or sustainable.
Coming to that, I'll take a minute. Certifications today has become a mandatory affair. why can't the government intervene in getting into just one certificate, for example? See, for textiles also at large, there are so many certificates involved. I believe that's just a money-making business, nothing else. If the government can intervene, get into just one certificate, it can make a bigger impact.
So last word from you, is it really difficult becoming a sustainable company?
Not really. You just have to be conscious and thoughtful. And if you're there, if you do that, you're 80% there.
Okay.
So very conscious and thoughtful. When you get into a new office, what you're going to be like. When you do the interiors, what you're going to be like. When you look at your sources of power or energy, what are they going to be like? A little bit of thoughtfulness and you're 80% there.
Okay. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me. A genuine commitment towards shifting to more sustainable environment goals seems to be the right way forward. But of course, a robust policy framework and innovation is equally important. And so is, I believe, engagement with local communities. That seems to be really important for sustainability. Thank you very much for joining me.